Guys, so this is my 2011 Ford Explorer. I bought this with damage, if you guys know about my vlog and history of this particular one. But anyway, the damage on my 2011 Explorer was it was hit on the driver hand side, and that hit damage pretty much did all of this, right? Also, the wheel inner tie rod was broken because the wheel was twisted over. Had to change some things. Now, here in California, we've had a lot of rain over the past couple of weeks, and since it's my first nice size SUV, I challenged myself by going through those giant flooded out rain-soaked puddle streets. And then after that, I started having some problems with my steering. My steering became a little bit tighter or rougher, shall we say, for going left or right. And then one day, all of a sudden, all my lights came on, and my management system went out. And it was saying, man, do some work on the power steering rack. So took it to get it diagnosed. They said they couldn't find any codes, and when they didn't find any codes, they just decided to just do a quick little reprogram, and all of a sudden everything's working. So that worked for about 1 week, literally 1 week. And I noticed as it was getting closer to the end of that 7 days that it was getting like rough sometimes. Instead of a nice smooth transition, it will be a little bit hard when I'm making a right or left hand turn. It's not so much hard as it would be like it's getting kind of stuck there, like it's a dry spot-ish type of feel. Hard to describe it other than that. So bought a new steering rack, went to go put it in, or technically secondhand, not new. Turns out that that steering rack did not have the right mounting point, so I couldn't use that steering rack. So they put my old one back on while I get ready to go buy a brand new or remanufactured one from the dealer or from AutoZone or wherever. And I'm noticing, and it's going to be hard because where I'm parked right now, there's a lot of machines over here and making a lot of noise, but I'm hoping that you can hear this, which makes me suspect. All right, so it's a little quieter. Let's see if you can hear this. Engine's running and everything. So if you listen, can you hear that? Kind of like a sliding, slight grinding sound, right? So that makes me wonder, when I had changed out that inner tie rod over on my passenger side, did I not have that boot on there tight enough, and then going through those water puddles, which mind me, there were a lot of them. It wasn't like one. I'm talking about where I live. Half the streets for about 2 miles are flooded. So you're driving through a lot of forced water puddles. And maybe that flushed out the grease and stuff. So my idea at this point is I'm going to get up in there. I'm going to pull that boot back, and I'm going to check it out. And if it looks pretty dry, I'm going to put some grease on it, just like you would do with the old school rack and pinions. I got some synthetic grease that I'm going to put on those gears to help see if it keeps it smooth and to see if it lasts a little longer than a week. In addition to that, I used a zip tie. You know, when you take those off, it's got that little metal clamp and you can't put that back together, so most of the time you put a zip tie on it. But maybe with my situation of when the rain comes and I have all the water puddles, I'm gonna do something a little bit more secure. So I don't remember the size of it, so I got this nice oversized one that's gonna go all the way down to that size, which is 2.5, which I know it should be bigger than the 2.5, and get a proper clamp on it. So I'm going to pack it with the grease. I'm going to put a proper clamp on it. I'm going to do that on both sides, and I'll touch base to see how long it's going to last. So this is my first day getting it back from the shop, and it feels nice and smooth. And if my suspicion is correct that grease has been pushed out, and my effect is, if the grease has been pushed out, the friction of the little, let's call it the cog, wheeling cog effect, it's got like a little spiral on it. I'll show you that later. If that grease is out of there, then maybe the resistance, because of there not being grease as it's going back and forth in the rack and pinion, maybe that resistance is causing the computer or the system, the electronics, to kind of go like, hey, this is not quite right, it's not doing what it's supposed to do, so for safety reasons, we're going to just shut this puppy down. So that's my suspicion, and I'm hoping that the grease will make the difference. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna right now have my door, I'm gonna reach in there. I'm gonna put this underneath and see if you can hear those sounds that I'm thinking is suspect, okay? So kind of hard to figure out, but if you look inside of there, that's my tie rod. That tie rod, I'm thinking maybe some water got into the back end of that, where my clamp is on this. The clamp is just a zip tie, and maybe that wasn't tight enough. And maybe it's let water inside of there. You can see that zip tie sticking out on the end. And maybe that let water in, and maybe this thing is dry inside on that gear. So I'm grease that up and see if I get it to not make that sound, because it's relatively new. And I'm thinking this is the only thing that's made the difference, besides of course the damage. I had changed this tie rod out because of the accident damage. I bought this at auction, remember? And that's my next step of what I'm gonna do. So as I go to each step, we'll call this the part 1 video. So from this point on, anything that I'm gonna do involving this is gonna be linked so that you can continue with the part 2 and however many parts there happens to be in case this is not the resolution. So this is more continuing the vlog for the work on my 2011 Explorer. And hopefully I can fix this problem by just adding the grease and save myself literally about $1,000. So for now, this is what I'm gonna try to do. I'm gonna just video's gonna be bad. I'm gonna just set my phone down, and then I'm just gonna move that rack and pinion back and forth just so you can hear the sound, okay? So you're gonna have a bad view, but that's okay. Alright, so that's the sound I'm hearing, and next step, part 2, coming up.